As far as the pregame show goes, it has been a good week of reading. Let's see. Was able to go through this again. This is a very quick read. Hojoki, which is a what year was this? Late 12th century. This is written by let's see, Kamo no Chome, and let's see, he lived through like I think an earthquake and two large urban fires, just like three natural disasters, three more than I personally have gone through in my life, and hopefully that will continue to be true with climate change. But yeah, just somebody who's seen a lot of rough times, and he's writing about his view on life, what going through all that means. Evening, Iceman Dan. It's good to see you. Yeah, no, there's still time. I know. I don't know if that's an optimistic note that many people would chime it as such, but who knows? Yeah, I mean, the optimism is that I'll be around for that long. Yeah. Anyway, that remains to be seen. Anyway, yeah, Hojoki is it's lovely. It's elegiac. It is a dirge for human impermanence, and also about the merits and the values of a solitary life and life of detachment, which one can imagine if one has been through three calamities, that detachment would seem like a pretty sweet deal. Evening Shantae. It is verse. This translation, let's see. Yeah, if you entrust yourself to the care of others, you will be owned by them. If you care for others, you will be enslaved by your own solicitude. If you conform to the world, it will bind you hand and foot. If you do not, then it will think you mad. And so that's this plane of existence right there, isn't it? Those are your options. So yeah, so it's very it's good. It's good stuff. The translator on this is translated by Yasuhiko Moriguchi and David Jenkins, with illustrations by Michael Hoffman. The title is Hojoki, Visions of a Torn World. So, highly recommend. And also, in a very different literary tradition, Sartor Resartus by Thomas Carlyle, who is very close to my heart, a Victorian English essayist who, honestly, just guy was born in the wrong time. He is right there with Gerard Manley Hopkins at being a romantic, having a romantic temperament and a romantic soul, and a much stuffier social climate. And it's very strange to see him fuse kind of very sort of like English Calvinism with some of its rigidity with the looseness and mysticism of German Romanticism. And if those categories mean nothing to you, let me just tell you that he combines the ethic of hard work with the transcendence of seeing the face of truth. And it's interesting, and not in kind of like the Voltaire Candide way, where like work is the only thing you can rely on in life, but it's more playful than that. Anyway, Sartor Resartus is just largely agreed as Carlyle's best work. I've read a lot of his smaller essays and love it, and one of his longer books that I don't remember right now, but I've never read this one, so we're jumping into that. And the first 20 pages flew by. It does this weird thing that historical fiction does. You'll see this in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. You'll also see this in Bram Stoker's Dracula, where if there is a fictional person being created in the fiction, they will go through great lengths to justify why they are writing about it in order to set up the literary device. So why are you reading all of these letters written by people who were, hunting a vampire? Well, Stoker's going to give you a reason. Why are you reading all of these diaries entries that detail how Frankenstein built his monster? Mary Shelley's going to tell you that, and he does the same thing. So part of me wants to skip it. The other part of me is like, what's 70 pages of context? What am I here for? So, but yeah, so that's the book part of the pregame show. And today for visuals, this actually connects with Killer 7 very nicely. It is I believe a 1960 cop and robber movie, 1968 by Kinshi Fukusaku, called Black Lizard. And it does one thing that is really interesting with narrative technique in terms of compressing time of a crime occurring. And we're going to look at that, and then also kind of look at the way that this movie adopts the role of a storyteller and self-consciously does so, but without breaking the fourth wall. This is really cool, and people think that addressing the audience, the only way you can do that is addressing the fourth wall. But let me tell you what, storytellers have existed for a long time, and you were super aware that they existed because they were telling you the story. And this movie does that. Oh yeah, Borges and Carlyle, that's like peanut butter and jelly. I can see it. Yeah, Carlyle is somebody who, even though you might see that you can see the Victorian sensibilities and the rigidity might turn you off. At the same time, you can absolutely see the softness and the glow of the spirit that's coming through, and people who have that, who can reflect that back, absolutely see it and attach onto it, and they see what Carlyle is doing in the context of his context. But yeah, let's take a look at this. So this is Black Lizard. This is the title shot. And apologies, I've got some notes here that I want to pull up and look at. And unfortunately, that kind of kicks off chat, so I'm going to have to kind of bump chat off to the side while I read this, but I promise you I will catch up as soon as we're done. So, yes, this is Black Lizard. It is based on a play by Yukio Mishima, one of the most internationally celebrated writers in modern Japanese language, and a fairly bombastic figure at that. If you want to see a big personality, you can take a look at him. But he actually has a cameo as a statue in this movie. But yeah, there are a lot of subplots in this one, but the core story is it's one of these things where, like, there is a detective named Akechi, and there's a criminal who is a woman who goes by the name Black Lizard, and they develop a romance that becomes inextricable from the cop and robber dynamic. And the moment that I want to look at is where they're having their sort of one of the great things about detective focused crime stories is that it's focused on one person solving a crime rather than a unit or a group or a department. So having one person there to act as the voice of the investigation enables these like battle of wits moments, and those are always very fun and exciting because you like to see who's playing nine-dimensional chess better, and it's great. And so this is that moment for them. So real quick, let's see if I can bump. Yeah, there's the Black Lizard. Yeah, so danger usually exists in the midst of boredom. So yeah, this is Akechi saying, talking about his philosophy of the stakeout, which is great. Danger usually exists in the midst of boredom. The white sheet of tedium suddenly smolders to reveal a crime's profile. Like, Akechi's view on crime absolutely would fit into Suda Goichi's view of crime in, like, The Silver Case. It's great. It's like this sort of like quasi, almost mystical way of viewing it as just like an integral part of nature and the unfolding of time and history. And it's really good, rather than something to be stamped out once and for all by justice. Yeah, so that's good. So just to kind of summarize what is happening at this moment and why this is really interesting. So Black Lizard sends a message to Akechi. I'm going to kidnap this person at midnight. Akechi's like, oh no, you're not. I'm going to go there and I'm going to wait until midnight, until you show up, and I'm going to catch you. Black Lizard kidnaps the person at 9 p.m. and has her shuttled away. And so Akechi is on a stakeout for a crime that has already been committed. He, nine-dimensional chess, is several steps ahead and has got one of his associates to tail the kidnapper and then apprehend them and release the victim. So, yeah, so she's enjoying the feeling of having fooled Akechi. He's already routed the kidnapping, so he can be comfortable and sort of ham up a little bit the fact that, you know, he's desperate. He can kind of sweat dramatically to give her the satisfaction of the chase. And so their interactions happen while they are waiting for the kidnapper, and there is something that happens here with the compression of time with this event that is really fascinating to me, because it cuts away from them waiting to the person being kidnapped and then to the kidnapper being apprehended. And what it does is it compresses every aspect of a crime down to a single scene. So you simultaneously have the crime being committed, waiting for the crime to happen, the crime being resolved, and still waiting for the crime to happen. And it all ends at midnight, which is when, you know, she said that that she was going to show up and do the kidnapping. And it's brilliant because it's like dramatic tension build up, you know, payoff at the same time. And storytelling wise, that just fascinates me. That's mind blowing. That's very cool and sophisticated. I have no idea how intended it was, but the effect is amazing. Yeah, that is a, you know, it almost doesn't matter if you meant to get there or not, just honestly as a creative person. It just matters that you got there and you know what you got when you get there. And that's it. That's great. And between Fukusaku's sort of like visual imagination and Yukio Mishima's sort of sophistication for storytelling, I have no doubt that those talents got there naturally. But yeah, so yeah, I recommend it. Black Lizard is fantastic. And if you have difficulty finding the movie, which I was only able to rent on VHS, so I do not think it is in circulation as a remaster anywhere. You might, if you want the story, you might look for Mishima's play, which also is translated under the name Black Lizard. But yeah, so there's something else that's interesting happening here. They're appraising each other, but it's a mind game where they're pretending not to know who the other is while also knowing that the other knows who the other is. So they're, and this is kind of where they're starting to fall in love, and so they're sort of like professing their romance to each other in these super veiled ways, and so again, it's that 9-dimensional chess thing. Let's see. And yeah, the way that she describes Akechi's relationship to crime, which is also, because she is the criminal, her way of describing his relationship to her. So there's the veil there. She is crime. She is equated to crime in this. It would absolutely. Oh yeah, it's enjoyable to wait for its sudden appearance. The appearance of a crime from the white sheet of tedium. But yeah. So yeah, oh yeah, that's where she says that she'll hang out with him. So yeah, she says your professional to relationship to crime must be like a photograph and it's negative. Your eyes see the same image and you think like a criminal. Only difference is the one is white and the other is black. And so there's a little bit of you know, sort of like villain and detective. Well, actually, the detective can sometimes be the villain, so let's scratch that dichotomy. Cop and robber, we're not so different, you and I, kind of element, except for the fact that they develop a romance as it goes on. So that's her sort of like expressing their sort of like balance with each other, and that absolutely would be in tune with the way that I forget the detective's name. Anyway, it's from Silver Case, and that would fit in there very nicely. So he kind of accepts this tack of the conversation, and evening, frigid mirth. And yes, I think I already said good evening. Anyway, I'm forgetting the order of things on the stream. If I didn't say good evening already, good evening. And I think I also already answered your question, so I implicitly said good evening. Anyway, let's get back to this. He accepts the conversational tack, and he goes into, so now she's talking about his relationship to crime, which is his relationship to her, and he starts talking to her as a way of praising her. So he says to commit a crime requires a certain qualification. Well, what qualification is that you need to commit a crime? One that the criminal may not be aware of. And this is building up to something visual that it does, but it does require sort of the context. And I got to say, having subtitled stuff really helps to convey that. So he goes into this little parable. Let's consider one woman. She receives a bouquet. Because she loves roses, she holds them close to her. And here we cut away to this illustration, and this illustration style becomes important later. So there's this woman holding the bouquet close. Suddenly a caterpillar appears from between the petals, and we get a close-up of that. Again, you got a big hairy caterpillar. Kind of there on the lower right, you can kind of see one with two eyes and a little slash of a mouth. And with a cry, she hurls the flowers into the fireplace. And that woman is not a criminal. Take another woman. She too loves roses. Upon seeing the insect, she calmly throws it alone into the fire. So she takes the caterpillar off and tosses it. And then she smells the flowers. So she, first woman throws the whole thing in, second woman takes away the blemish, enjoys it. Third person, she will neither kill the insect nor burn the flowers. In desperation, she goes to the man who gave her the bouquet and pushes him into the fireplace. And here you get an illustration of that. Goodbye, fella. Check with your florist before giving gifts. Society will call her a criminal, but of those three, she is the most tender-hearted. So that is his way of recognizing that, yes, I do see that when you talk about crime, you're talking about yourself, and I also see your humanity. And what's interesting to me about this, like I've been thinking about like what that parable would mean, and I think that basically the first two in the example are looking at the gift as a material thing, and they're responding to it as a material thing, and the third person sees it as a gift. And a gift is a different category of thing than a bouquet of roses. A gift is something that is interpersonal and has meaning, and so if the gift has a corruption to it, that means that there's something about the gift giving and therefore the gift giver that has a corrupt element to it. So what she is doing is she's responding to the reality of the relationship. She's responding to this object's real identity, not its appearance. And that's where the tenderheartedness comes in. That's the sensitivity to reality and the ability to respond to it. And that's very interesting to me. And so, yeah, so the visual shift between these moments, they're sort of, very darkly lit, and those monochromatic illustrations that dramatize the parable. And those illustrations are in the same style as the drawings at a club that is owned by Black Lizard, and we see this early on, these sort of like very anguished figures, and these are just like paintings that are around her club. And we also see these, there's her set against a background of it, and we also see these sort of at the end, after she has been foiled, and the logo on the Black Lizard is in the same style as well. And this interests me storytelling-wise, because as he's telling the story, it cuts to these illustrations, and this is not information that the other characters see. We're often used to, if there's something stylistic or something that is not representational showing up, oftentimes it's something that's reflecting the psychology of a character, or is showing us something that a character is looking at that nobody else knows. But we actually don't have any reason to think that either character sees those images. The movie just visually links that style of illustration with Black Lizard, and it's the movie's way of saying, while he's telling the story, this is about her. And it communicates to the audience without breaking the fourth wall. And it is the audience. It's the movie as a storyteller. It's not nodding and winking. It's expositing. And that's kind of how I think about the stylized elements of Killer 7. Yes, this is how it relates. Because Killer 7's style is often brought up as one of its most outrageous features. It's weird because that is often brought up as one of its most outrageous features and not the heaviness of the topics that it addresses, one of which I think will come up in our stream tonight. And so a lot of people dismiss it as style over substance, and I think that's such a misleading thing, because the style-substance dichotomy actually removes the idea of a storyteller, because a storyteller, if you have had the pleasure of somebody telling you a story in person, you know that they have a style of speaking and a way of presenting that is entirely unique and that is separate from, but also integral to the story that you're hearing. And so you just can't separate the storyteller from the story, and that's what the style-substance dichotomy, the reason why I don't really buy into that so much, is because if you take away style as relevant, you take away the storyteller. That's what Black Lizard prioritizes. That's what Killer 7 prioritizes. And all of the different feints, all of the different anime styles between different cutscenes, they all emphasize that these are different perspectives on storytelling, and that's your lens. And what that means ultimately is not something I have a conclusion on, but to be able to identify it and honor it as something that has value and not as something that is a frivolity, which is kind of how I think it's often treated and dismissed, is very important. And it's also something that incites my imagination on a very sort of gut, non-analytic level. So, those are my thoughts on those things. And we will hop over to Killer 7.